Okay, in the last video, talking about more with lists was the name of the video. At the end, I talked about using lists with files. Okay, so that was a little bit awkward because I was in Colab, we couldn't do files, so that is kind of ridiculous. So don't pay attention to that. So instead, I've moved over to PyCharm for a separate video to talk about that because there's some interesting things going on there. So we've got our cities list here, okay, and we're going to open a file called cities.txt. Okay. It's going to use a write lines function. The write lines function in Python does nothing but write a list to a file. Okay. We're then going to read that, open the file, close that file for writing, open it up for reading and print it out. Okay. But there's a drawback to this write line, read line function that you'll see when we run it. It's that it doesn't put those new line characters in, and it turns it all in just a one big list item. Okay. So that's not really the best way to go about doing that. Okay. So what you want to do instead, we still have our normal list that we created. Okay. We're still going to open the file for writing, but we're going to use the write instead of the write lines. Okay. So I'm going to get rid of that. And instead, I'm going to do a little loop here. Okay. So I'm going to do for item in cities. That's going to go through one by one, give us the cities. Okay. And then I'm going to do an out file dot write the item plus a new line character and then close it. Okay. But now I have those new line characters to deal with. Okay. So I'm going to have to do the same basic idea as far as reading in the file. Okay. So I can still do the read line, but just doing this part. I mean, the printout may be weird. We'll see how that looks. Yeah, it printed it out. Okay. So we've improved our situation, but we have those new line characters. So now if we look, the file looks like we expect. Okay. So doing it with the loop is better. But in order to print out the way we would expect and not have those new line characters, I'm gonna have to do the following. Okay. So I'm going to strip out the new line characters. Okay. So I'm going to start by setting an index variable equal to 0. That's where we're going to start. Okay. Then I'm going to say while index is less than the length of cities. Okay. And the reason I'm doing this and not a while or not a for loop is that I need these index numbers. Okay. So this is going to make it a little easier to do that. Okay. So I'm going to say cities. Actually, I picked a C this time when I opened it. So again, I'm opening the file for reading. I'm saying C is equal to read lines. Now I'm going to go through to strip this out. Okay, so I'm going to say C of index is equal to C of index dot the R strip function, where we're going to strip out those new line characters one by one. Okay, so when I've done that, and I've closed my file already, should be good. I'm just converting that. Okay, and now my file is correct as we expected. Okay, so again, the key takeaways there are that instead of using the write line, which doesn't do any new line characters at all, makes the list when you come back have just one big item. We're going to use a loop with a write, okay, and add this new line character. And then when we're reading them in, we're just going to make, after we do the read lines works okay, but it doesn't deal with those new line characters. So I'm going to loop through to strip all those out, okay, and that should work. Now, if we're doing numbers, of course, we're going to have to convert when we're writing up here. If these were numbers, we would have to do the string of the number before we do the new line character. Okay. Then on the reading, we would have to convert it to an int or a float. But otherwise, it works more or less the same. Okay. So hopefully that's clearer on using files with lists. The other part was pretty muddled.